New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
And that is the absolute truth, friends. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to Who Do You Think You Are? A podcast dedicated to helping you have the highest regard for yourself, quite simply. Live from a place of genuine self-respect and self-love, and make yourself a priority in your own life. We meet here each week with curated tips and strategies designed to help you drop your psychological masks. When we do that, we're in a much better position to connect with our truest essence and simply live life more easily. Because we know as self-love builders that when we approach life in this way, we naturally and organically have more room, more generosity, and more love for others. And you know, and I know that the world needs that now more than ever. This is a time to be as clear-headed as we possibly can. You know, if you've been listening to me for a while, you've heard me say avoidant, passive, foggy, histrionic, self-absorbed minds do nothing to help anyone. So we are our own instruments, and it is up to us to be as clear a vessel as we possibly can. So welcome, one and all self-love builders. Really good to be here. And I'll tell you, it's good to be talking. It's good to literally be talking, and I'll tell you why. You may have noticed that I wasn't on live last week. I had taken myself on a mini retreat, and that's what I want to be sharing with you tonight, how that went for me. I decided I needed to clear my head and get away for a few days, so I arranged a 5-day personal, pretty silent, quiet retreat for myself. Took myself to a hotel down the Jersey Shore. Those of you who might be familiar with the New Jersey Shore know what a fantastic place it is, especially this time of year. It's not crowded, and it's a great atmosphere for contemplation. And contemplate, I did. I got there. I got myself, all situated. I brought a bunch of reading material that had been piling up on my nightstand since the holidays. I brought my journal, and I was all set to really de-stress. And for the first few hours, that's pretty much what happened. I felt kind of a top layer of stress melt away. And I said, oh, I'm so glad I did this. This was really what I needed. And then about 12 hours in or so, my body and mind received a different message. And if you've read my newsletter this morning, you already know that I began to feel kind of ill, actually. I began to feel as though I had the flu. Now, I could tell that I didn't have the flu at all, but I felt that kind of malaise and kind of achy. And um, I glanced in the mirror and I saw that I was actually pale. And I began to feel really down. Now, this was not what I was counting on, but I decided to go with it. I thought to myself, okay, this is all part of the process. I'm not here to steer anything. I'm here to allow whatever needs to come up to come up. And in pretty short order, I could tell that I was in a period of detox. And I thought to myself, okay, this is the detoxification portion of my retreat. And as this wave washed over me, this wave of, I call it an emotional flu, as it washed over me, I began to understand every part of this wave. It just became clearer. I think because I had removed one layer of stress, the stress of having to keep appointments and look at my watch and the commitments, we all have to keep. That was absent. And so what came up, like one of those cafeteria trays, you take the first tray and then the next tray comes up, you take that tray and the next tray comes up until there are no more trays. Well, what came up for me was all the ways in which, despite my work and despite, what I share with you, I could tell that I got myself into some trouble. I realized all the yeses I said, which resulted in me overextending myself. I realized the projects, the too many projects that I took on all at the same time, too much. The commitments I made that I didn't really think through properly enough to understand how much bandwidth that would take. And so all of these, what shall I call them, machinations, steps, the things I did to myself unwittingly to place myself in that stressful situation were now all coming back and all washing over me. And as I said, I was initially disappointed because I really wanted this retreat to, work for me and get the most from it. But I went with it. And by the next day, I think things turned around. Not because I did anything. What I did was I allowed the wave. And after it passed over me, this clarity came of how I got myself here. And then I caught up to myself. And then I was in pretty good standing. Now, on this retreat, I elected to do very little talking. That was the whole idea. It was, in essence, a personal, silent retreat. So I did very little talking. I mean, I went out for meals, and of course I had to order the meals, and please and thank you. But other than that, with one exception, near the end of my retreat time, I met up with a person whom I hadn't yet met in person, but knew over corresponding through messaging. So with that brief exception, I was in silence. And I have to say, it was, once I got over my emotional flu, it was really quite wonderful for me. It was actually expansive. I was able to be both still and creative at the same time. I felt the flow coming back to me because I had felt a bit stagnant and a bit, I use the word impacted. When you're severely clogged and something should be flowing and it isn't. That's how I felt before I left. And so I felt that energy, that flow energy begin to come back to me. And I was very grateful. And what happened was, one of the things that happened is my relationship to time actually changed a little bit. Instead of lamenting how little time there is, gee, not enough hours in the day, what, you know, gosh, I have to start earlier tomorrow, whatever the case. Instead of lamenting how little time there is, I felt in a way there was no time. There was only presence. I was so fascinated by that. Um, I I should have remembered that actually, because I've done silent retreats before, some on my own and some in a structured way with a larger group of people. But I think I had forgotten that. So my relationship with time itself became something else. And all there was me. And in that me space, and I really want to define that if I can, because it wasn't me thinking about myself. I mean, there might have been some of that where in 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 the space where all that stressy stuff used to be, there was now more room for other things to come up, thoughts, memories, recollections, some of which were delightful and wonderful, and some of the thoughts I wish I wasn't thinking. But I made a promise to myself to allow them all, and that's what I did. So when I say there was just me, there was me with this feeling that I was connected to everyone else and everything else. And I have to call that a spiritual experience. I got my brain out of the way. I got my rumination out of the way. My must do's, my should haves, all those things. I got that out of the way, and sort of underneath that was this connectivity just to everything. No thing in particular, no one in particular, but everything. And it was quite a beautiful feeling, I have to say. So I titled this episode, For the Love of Others, Take Care of You. For the love of others, take care of you. And yes, we're going to be talking about self-care, but with a bit of a twist. Why do I say for the love of others? Well, I think I returned from that retreat slightly different than I was when I left. Nothing radical, of course, but just enough of a tweak that my partner noticed, and she appreciated it. So I was a nicer person. That's the truth of the matter. I came back a nicer person. Why? Because I wasn't so, by taking me time in this way, I became less self-absorbed. And you know, when you're self-absorbed, think about it. How much room do you have for other people? How much tolerance and patience do you have for other people? So I could give you, a couple of letters of recommendation, what I'm like when I'm in a stressed state. And I think now I can add at least one letter of recommendation for what I'm like when I'm in this other space. So self-care is not just something we do for our own benefit, though, of course, we are the primary beneficiary. But I view it as a responsibility. A responsibility. And in fact, I would call it a sacred obligation for the people who are in our orbit, for the people who cross our path. What do you think about that? That when we take care of ourselves, by extension, we just have more bandwidth and more patience and more empathy for other people. And that, I found, doesn't require effort. That just is a natural sort of side effect of tending to ourselves. So, is self-care selfish? I hear that every day. Oh gosh, it's selfish. How can I take time away from the people in my family or, my workplace? Isn't it selfish? Isn't it self-centered? Well, I think at core it is self-centered, but self-centeredness gets a, bad reputation. We must be centered. We must be grounded. Think about it. If we're not grounded in who we are, in our values, if we're not grounded in self-awareness and self-honesty and self-respect, if we're not grounded there and anchored there, what happens? A wind comes along, a wind, a circumstance, an argument, some tension, a disagreement, a problem, a challenge. That comes along and we find ourselves untethered and uprooted. And when that happens, and I know I've experienced this and I bet you have too, we become at the mercy. We are at the effect of those circumstances. And then we're like, pick your analogy. We're like a tree that doesn't bend, it snaps. We are, we're we're a battery with no lines. I mean, think about it. And then we kind of get into this situation where we are, I call it bone on bone with ourselves. There's nothing to lubricate our feeling of generosity. We go into kind of a crisis state, maybe lowercase c, but nevertheless, a state where we're not our best selves. So think about that. I think I noticed some people joining us in the chat. I'd love to say hello. Leandra, welcome all the way from Knoxville. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. Patricia, welcome. You're all ears. Okay, I love that. I love that. Still Bill, welcome. When I went to Alaska, I could feel the vastness of where I was, but actually felt a part of it. It was all but spiritual. Yes. Yes. So Bill, I'm imagining that you too were in a state of the absence of stress and the presence of flow, right? And of course, the landscape of Alaska lends itself to the vastness. But I know people who have been in Alaska, who've been at the Grand Canyon, who've been to the Seven Wonders, and they could not avail themselves of the beauty, of the limitless beauty and vastness, because inside, knotted up. So back to what I said about being the vessel for beauty to come to us and flow through us and out toward others, right? Bill, that's beautiful. Keep us abreast of all your travels. Dawn, welcome. For me, a time of introspection is an important part of a retreat. Yeah, that's the whole thing I found, introspection. And I don't know about you, Dawn, but I did not have any agenda. I didn't know. I was just there because I have learned, and I'm still learning and deepening, but I've learned to trust the process. I know that I was in a safe place, and I know that I could let myself go and just surrender and give myself over to whatever was going to surface. And I knew that I would be okay, even in the midst of my emotional flu. So yes, introspection. Patricia, agree wholeheartedly. It's generous to get our own house in order. It's hard work, but everyone benefits, especially those we love. Yeah, it's generous to get our own house in order. Patricia, you beat me to it because I have in my notes, I wanted to say that self-care is one of those things we do. And the analogy that I came up with is it's like living in a home. And, you live in a home, there's home maintenance. And so the question is, Do we just feel satisfied with the decor? We could have a beautiful decor. Do we just feel satisfied with that? Or do we concern ourselves with the maintenance of the house? Patricia, do we wait until there's a little leak, a drip, drip, drip outside? The gutters aren't working properly. Oh, well, I'll wait until there's a bigger crack in the ceiling. Self-care requires us to anticipate the leaks, the leaky holes, if you will, within. The places where we're blocked, shut off, shut down, hiding, running away, avoiding. These are things we all do. There's no shame in it, please. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, and as such, we have personalities. And part of our personality is using defense mechanisms to navigate life and to survive things and keep ourselves comfortable in a state of homeostasis. But the problem with defense mechanisms, if we are not self-aware enough, is that those defense mechanisms, avoidance, rationalizing, projecting, justifying, create other problems of their own. Now we have two problems. We still have the leaky hole, and now we have layers of defensive armor on top of that. And that can only cause us to shrink. That's not expansive. That's not the Alaska type mindset. We become small and tight and constricted. And we bring that energy with us wherever we go. And anyone who crosses our path gets a little hit of that. Don't you think? So, Michelle, good evening. Nice to have you here. Janine, welcome. Just use this. Don't go away while I do this. There we go. Depletion honors no one, helps no one. Oh, Janine, absolutely. Have you figured out how to avoid getting there in the first place? Well, that is the question, isn't it? First of all, depletion honors no one. And I found this out, when I say yes too many times at the expense of my own health, and I don't protect my boundaries of time, of energy, could be anything, time, money, sleep. I'm saying yes. What happens underneath? I could develop resentment. Now, I don't want people to know I feel resentful, especially if I've just said yes to them or I've made a commitment. I don't want to show them that I feel resentful. I'm in a mental tug and pull in my mind. But resentment is what is inevitable when we overextend ourselves. And so, where does that resentment go? It never, ever evaporates. It only takes another form somewhere within. It comes out sideways. It comes, you've heard the expression, then you have to come home and kick the dog. Your boss yells at you, you yell at your partner yells back at you, you cut somebody off on the road, you have no place to put it, you come home and kick the dog because it has to go someplace. And if it doesn't manifest itself in an outward behavior, then it's going to manifest in an internal behavior beyond resentment. And that's where anger, held inward, turned in on the self, becomes what? Depression. Becomes depression. So, Janine, the $1 million question, having gone this far with myself, being out of balance for too long and too far and too long, I take this lesson very seriously, and I'm not eager to repeat it. So I come back to myself, and there's a big note to self. First of all, pump the brakes on all my yeses. okay? And get more comfortable saying no, getting more comfortable saying, I'd love to, but I'm not able to do it right now wholeheartedly. I'll be glad to revisit this. So, in essence, saying no, protecting my boundaries, recognizing, bringing this retreat experience with me to know that if I keep doing that, sliver by sliver by sliver, I'm going to end up back where I was. So, it's recognizing the signs. So, I look at it mentally as installing kind of a yellow blinker in my mindset. Take it easy, take it easy. Now, one of the things that came up for me is, why do I overextend myself in the first place? Now, there could be several answers to that, but I'll tell you one of them is not pure altruism. I mean, there is that. But if I'm to be completely honest, I like feeling needed. There probably isn't a therapist on the planet, I don't think, who doesn't come from that place of liking to feel, liking to be needed to need to be needed. But, we all have to check ourselves. We all have to weigh that out against the cost. So looking at our deep, deep, deep motivation for why we do anything and everything, you've heard me say this before, is really the key to not letting things pile up. Because in the words of Janine, depletion honors no one. We do no one any favors by overshooting our personal, emotional runway, is how I like to put it. So balance, being in balance, being in equanimity, a state of equanimity, requires vigilance. And part of vigilance is discernment. And it requires talking to yourself. We have to talk to ourselves. We have to have inner dialogue. We have to question ourselves. And if you're not used to doing that, it can seem tedious. It can seem, I don't know. I'm searching for words because I've actually grown accustomed to doing that, and I actually love doing that. But I think that it can feel not genuine, or like, what do you mean talk to yourself? Yeah, talk to yourself. Why am I doing this? What's the question under the question that I'm asking? And after the break, I'm going to talk about specifically what self-care is and what it isn't, and how to get to deeper answers within ourselves, right? So coming attraction after the break, which we're going to take in a moment. I see Kathleen McDonald. Welcome, Kathleen from Massachusetts. So good to see you here. Enjoying the podcast and your sharing. Well, I'm so glad. Thank you so much. Dawn, tuning into ourselves along the way allows us to recalibrate as we go rather than get to full out depletion. This goes hand in hand with what Janine is saying. When you have your GPS and you go past the exit or whatever, you don't make the turn, rerouting, recalibrating. I think that's something that self-awareness allows us to do. And if we catch ourselves at a level 2, 3, or 4, it's easier to recalibrate. It's easier to shift tracks. At a 9 or a 10, it's more difficult. So I hope that with benefit of this conversation, I hope that you can take this into your lives and into your mindset and have a better handle, an easier handle on gauging yourself when you're at least approaching what I call the cones of good boundaries. And again, boundaries in every sleep, energy, money, time, space, right? Recognize the signals when you're approaching those cones. So with that, let's take this in, let's digest. When we come back, I'll be talking about some how-tos and how to get to a deeper answer when we ask ourselves, why am I doing this? So you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are on New Thought Media Network. I'll be right back. Stay with me.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Welcome to Science of Mind Archives, your gateway to spiritual wisdom. Join us for our grand opening gala. Experience a weekend of inspiration. Enjoy a ribbon-cutting ceremony, a gala dinner and workshops, plus a labyrinth walk and town hall. Connect with a community of seekers. Explore spiritual teachings and resources. Find your path to personal growth. Join us from April 24th to 27th. Lodging options are still available. Visit our website www.scienceofmindarchives.com for more details. Please RSVP by March 15th. Featuring Reverend Jesse Jennings, musical inspirations with Karen Drucker, and the spirit of Ernest Holmes. Come celebrate our new home at Unity Village, Lee's Summit, Missouri, and please visit www.scienceofmindarchives.com.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
Welcome back. If you're just joining me, you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? I'm your host, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, Catherine Duca, and we are talking about self-care this evening. We are talking about the benefits of self-care, not only for ourselves, but for everyone and anyone else who crosses our path. So tonight's episode is entitled, For the Love of Others, Take Care of You. So before the break, we were talking about this analogy that I believe Patricia brought up, which is like a house. Taking care of a house. It's not about, or it isn't just about how beautiful the house is, what the, accoutrements are of the house, but about the structural integrity of the house. And like a house, like a home, we have to watch our own structural integrity. So, let's talk about Instagram. Let's talk about the cliche that self-care has become, right? We can't go anywhere without hearing self-care touted. And sometimes when people are talking about self-care, they're maybe on a vacation, which is fine. Maybe they're drinking a $12, I don't know, Starbucks something or other. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe they're pictured with, a scented candle or a diffuser. Self-care, a night on the town. I deserve it. I worked hard. Self-care. I'm going to eat this thing that I'm telling myself I really don't want to eat because I don't feel well, but I worked hard all week. I deserve this reward. Self-care. Not exactly. Not exactly. When we reward ourselves with the very thing we're trying to maybe let go of, whether that's alcohol or sugar or a toxic relationship, whatever the case, when we reward ourselves with that very thing, we're not tending to our overall health. And that is really what the meaning of self-care is. There's nothing wrong with these other things, but self-care is much deeper than that. Again, to paraphrase what we talked about in the opening of tonight's show, self-care has everything to do with self-awareness and self-honesty and doing right by ourselves, having our own back. Not in a way, this is not the me generation of, what decade was it? What decade was that? The me generation. Was that the 80s? Me. Tending to ourselves, taking care of our energy, working with our true desires is not me and only me. It's me with an understanding of my place in the world. It's me with a consciousness of connectivity with humanity. And when I say humanity, I mean, a global consciousness, and I mean a consciousness regarding the guy at 7-Eleven, who's checking out your, ringing up your quart of milk. Everyone. I remember Marianne Williamson, whom I very much admire. Years ago, she would say, you can update the lingo, but she would say, if you have a Rolodex, you have a ministry. And that's so true, because it extends far and wide, and it extends to the person right in front of us, the person online, the person trying to get in front of you at the Lincoln Tunnel. You get the idea. So, tending to ourselves in a deep way involves healing of our wounded selves, healing of our inner child, being an advocate for ourselves, being our own protector and encourager and cheerleader and kindergarten teacher, which is to say, not drill sergeant. Okay, there's a big difference between speaking to ourselves with the gentleness and maybe the melodic tone of a loving kindergarten teacher and the spittle spreading barking of a drill sergeant. Nobody ever really made any changes, and if they, as a result of the inner drill sergeant, and if they did, those changes didn't last, because we can't shame ourselves into healing. Impossible. So I want to talk about how to talk to ourselves when we have an issue. I can't keep up with the chat, to tell you the truth. I'll try to get back to it. But I want to quickly go over, this is an example of a conversation I had just the other day. And frankly, it's a conversation I have almost every day. So someone was presenting a problem, and she said, in essence, why do I feel so low? Like, why do I feel so low? And I asked her, well, why do you feel so low? And she said, because I'm always exhausted. Now, if that's as far as her self-care inquiry went, then she might do things to unexhaust herself. She might, drink more coffee, something like that. And not that that's bad. She might exercise. Of course, that's not bad, but that's not the whole story. So why do I feel so low? Because I'm always exhausted. Why am I always exhausted? Because I'm not sleeping well. If she stopped there, she might take a sleeping agent. Nothing wrong with that, but go one question beyond that. I have a friend who says, you have to ask one more question. And she's so correct. So why am I not sleeping well? Because I stay up too late. Well, why do I stay up too late? I stay up too late because it's the only time I feel like I get to relax. And of course, the one more question. Why do I only feel like I can relax at night? The answer, because I don't set boundaries for myself during the day. Well, that's an example and a template of how the one more question thing works. So that underneath the top layer is the bottom most layer. Well, I don't know if this is the bottom most, but it surely is near the bottom, because I don't set boundaries, because I give too much of myself. Why do I give too much of myself? Because I need to feel needed, because I feel better when I rescue people, because when I rescue people, I don't have to think about my own rescuing. And not that there's anything inherently wrong with that. And it's good to be helpful. It's good to be a hand up for people. Absolutely. 100%. But if that's the only note in the octave and you are compelled, or I am compelled to be the rescuer, that has an expiration date before it catches up with us. So understanding our motivation at the deepest level possible is really self-care, because that's tending to ourselves in a holistic way. It's supporting our true well-being. And that's the name of the game here. How to have the highest regard for ourselves. Because when we do, without saying a word, we invite and encourage others to have high self-regard for them. And that cuts down on a lot of things. Cuts down on resentment, cuts down on competition, cuts down on jealousy. And it makes for more connection. So with that, I'm going to see if I can catch the chat. Okay. Michelle, very strong emotional responses to tonight's content. Very telling, and an indicator that as much as I practice self-care, there is much room for further explanation. I thank you for sharing that, Michelle. I really do. By allowing this conversation to touch you, I think I can gather from what you're saying, you're opening yourself up to a deeper level of yourself. That's why I say, who do you think you are? Because who we think we are is often the lovely furnishings in the home. It's not really the structure. And I submit to you that at core, our structure, who we really are, is infinitely more magnificent than who we think we are. But we have to get there. We have to get there. Let's see. Janine. Janine is talking to Patricia. Hope it's okay if I eavesdrop. Patricia, great point. I think the right people will understand your wish for more time and your limitations because you don't have it. I wonder if I missed. Did I miss something here? I'm not sure I did. I can't keep up, actually. Patricia, wish I had more time. After I engage with new people, I know they will likely be disappointed in me because of how little time I actually have. How do we balance this and maintain our boundaries? I wish I had more time. After I engage with new people, I know they will likely be disappointed in me because of how little time I actually have. Well, listen. If we just think we have to be all things to all people, we're going to get boxed into a corner. Oh, it has happened to me many times and still happens. So how do we balance this and maintain our boundaries? We keep uppermost in our mind the consequences for when we don't. And then we find ourselves back at square zero anyway. So we can very politely say, listen, I wish I had more time, because that's the truth. I wish I had more time. I'd love to be able to do that, or go there, or accompany you, or drive you here. I just, I'm just not able to do that without it taking some toll on me. Find your language, but I think that's perfectly fine. And I'll tell you the truth. Whenever anyone has said that to me, Kathy, I'd like to, but I can't for whatever reason. I tell you, I might be a little disappointed because I have to go down the list and find someone else to drive me to the airport, for example. But I respect that. Do I want you to do something for me that's going to deplete you? As Janine already taught us, depletion works for no one. I don't want anybody's anything that doesn't have the right energy. I don't want anybody's money or time or favor or anything. Unless I'm having an emergency. Yeah, if I'm having an emergency, I hope you drop what you're doing. If it's a true emergency. But we don't have to be all things to all people. Bill, we tend to think it's all about us, but we must remember that actually it's about all of us. It is about all of us. It really is. And that's a matter of consciousness, I feel. Right? So many comments here. I don't know that I can get to all of them. I wish I had more time. Believe me, I would love to spend another hour. Michelle says, I know better. I'm a former psychotherapist and coach. Due to health issues, I had to close my private practice. Now I'm caregiving for my folks. No days off. I know better. I'm a former psychotherapist and coach. Due to health issues, I had to close my private practice. Now I'm caregiving for my folks. No days off. So I'm assuming, Michelle, that you're saying, and this is a different Michelle, right? That you're saying you're struggling with self-care. I think that's what you're saying. I was going to read a question. Let me read the question and actually address both at the same time. You, Michelle, and the person who wrote this in from my newsletter. Incidentally, if you're interested in getting my newsletter every Sunday morning, Sunday Sauce, just email me at Catherine@CatherineDuca.com, Catherine@CatherineDuca.com, and just put "add me" in the subject line, and I'll know what you mean, and you'll get a copy of the newsletter. Adrian says, a retreat sounds great, but many of us can't take that time away. I work full-time, have 2 kids in school, and care for my aging mother. How can I possibly go on a retreat? It's just not possible for me, but I can't keep going on like this. Any suggestions? So to Adrian and to Michelle, I say this. First of all, God bless. God bless you for caring for your parents. Listen, I don't know exactly how you feel about that. I know when I took care of my aging parents, not easy. My mom came to live with me for about 5 years. She had Alzheimer's, and of course, quite an advanced stage as time passed. And my dad had throat cancer. Not easy, but for me, it was also the blessing of my life to be able to give the people who gave me life, to give them comfort, and to accompany them. So, Michelle, I say, I personally take my hat off to you and I say, God bless you. This is a tough situation, and for Adrian as well. And I understand not everyone can take a 5-day thing, but it's about, if you can possibly do it, intentionality. It's about remembering that you, as the primary caregiver, have to take care of yourself, especially if you're in it for the long haul. You have to stay as healthy as you can. So what to do? So mini retreats with intentionality. If at all possible, let me listen to a guided meditation. Let me visit YouTube and look at Alaska or look at a landscape. Do perhaps a guided meditation with the idea of getting still and getting quiet and just being mindful of what's coming into you, because you are giving, both of you are giving in an extraordinary way, and the output all the time without input. So it's imperative to, with intention, do things, however briefly, however small, with the desire to replenish that which you are giving out. Nature, 10 minutes in nature. Depletion and lack, it's easy when we caregive for elderly, aging, and infirmed family members. We can feel like, we have nothing in the tank. And I certainly know what that's like regarding caring for a parent. And I found it restorative, in many doses, to go outside and, I'll tell you the truth, like almost count the leaves on the trees. Look at the blades of grass. And you say, what the heck is that? I'm exhausted. I'm running around, doctor to doctor. It's stressful. I never know when the other shoe is going to fall with my loved one. What is going outside and counting the trees? Are you kidding me? I understand that. I understand that. I say, but try it. But try it with the motivation and the intention to look to being willing to be restored just a little bit, and look at the abundance in nature. Nature is unendingly wealthy. The grains of sand, the waves in the ocean, the blades of grass, the leaves on a tree, all those things. We have that same divine intelligence within us. And sometimes, amid the exhaustion, if we can stop with the intentional break of saying, let me plug into something bigger than myself, that can help in a surprising way. Is it a panacea? No. I would ask you and encourage you to congratulate yourself, and more than that, honor yourselves, Michelle and Adrian. Honor yourselves for what you're doing, and anyone else who is a caregiver for anyone. Such a noble thing, really. Such a selfless thing. But we have to try, or be willing to try and view ourselves as a vessel that needs replenishing, and nowhere better to do it. No better reminder than look at a newborn, walk around and wait for a baby in the stroller, or go into nature to look at the vastness of which we are a part. And listen, I just right before my show, I really want you to hear me on this. I listened to the show right before mine, The Miracle of Prosperity with Reverend Jim Webb, who, in a pinch, because I understand his guest had technical difficulties, in a pinch, pulled in the incomparable producer of this show, Reverend Michael Mangus, as his special guest. And they talked about affirmative prayer. And friends, get a hold of that episode. It's parked right there on YouTube. You can listen to it any day or night. The Miracle of Prosperity. They talked about affirmative prayer and how to do it. And it was a wonderful crash course, because affirmative prayer will lift your spirits, literally, just by learning about what it is if you're not already familiar. Many of you who are tuned into this station already know about that, but many don't. And I didn't, and I had to learn it. And I'll tell you, it's a remarkable way of aligning yourself with an unlimited supply of goodness and love and resources and abundance and prosperity, and on and on and on. So I hope that was helpful to both of you. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your story with us. And thank you to everyone in the chat. My apologies if I didn't get to your comments. I love every one of them, and I read them all when the show is over. Patricia, I wish I had more time. I really do. So friends, I'm going to ask the producer if I could do a 2-hour show. I don't know. I don't think he'll let me, but know that I want to, because you help me feel more accompanied on my journey. You help me feel more connected. And you're really the highlight of my week in so many ways. So I thank you. I think I saw a Lisa on here. Lisa, I saw you. You went by quickly. I want to say hello to you and thank you for joining. And thank you for staying up late with me. I'll be back next week. I don't know what I'll talk about. My clients always help me come up with the show content. So as Patricia said, all ears. I will be all ears for my clients for all the reasons that I want to be, but also because they help me do the show. So until then, take good care of yourselves. Get a good night's rest. And if you're troubled by that, do the questions and see what's at the bottom. And in a pinch, let go of whatever is troubling you tonight, knowing that it'll be there. It might not, but it may be there in the morning. And if it is, you'll address it fresh. For now, give yourself the gift of restorative sleep. I thank you, friends, self-love builders. Let's take care of ourselves, for ourselves, and for one another. Much love to you. You've been listening to Who Do You Think You Are on New Thought Media Network. Stay well, stay safe, and have a good night.